clip on both. Hello everybody and welcome to Manga of the Week Episode 2, the show in which I binge read an entire manga in a week and let you, the audience, know what I think of it. No manga is safe from my prying eyes, be it ongoing, completed, canceled either on Twitter or for real. I will strive to read all good, bad, and trashy manga and bring it to you guys so that you can enjoy it too. As you can see by my hair, something dramatic has occurred in my life, and before I get into this week's manga, I figured I'd tell y'all all about it. It's a rather short story, so I'll be brief. Yesterday, as you do, I was sitting on the porcelain throne, dropping the kids off at the pool, as we say, and one of the kids was a little bit chubbier than the others, and he went into the pool a little bit aggressively, and in doing so, he splashed some water on my hind end, and when I tell you that my soul left my body, well, there you go. Now, as you can see by my hair, it went out the top, so hopefully that means that I'm, destined for heaven. Y'all didn't come here to hear about my spiritual encounters. However, this week's manga does deal with a bit of reincarnation. Yes, that's right. We're already getting into isekai. This week's manga of the week is Reincarnated as a Sword, or Tensei Shitara Ken Deshita. Something like that. Yeah, I probably butchered that. It probably just sounded like I said a bad word too. Reincarnated as a Sword by Yu Tanaka. Sorry if I butchered your name. In the last decade plus, isekai, which means different world, manga, light novels, and anime have all just blown up. There are literally thousands of these original works, but they deal with somebody either falling into a world mysteriously, like transported or summoned, or a lot more commonly, they die mysteriously or suddenly, unexpectedly, and are reincarnated into another world, and typically with that shtick comes them gaining some sort of very overpowered skill or trait or growth ability, and they become the heroes of that world. That went on for a very long time, and people, obviously, with what I just laid out, which is very bare bones, people obviously began to get a little tired of that trope, even though, fantasy worlds are always in fashion, so to speak. So authors, obviously, began to want to subvert these tropes. And so you started getting things like people being thrown into a world not as the hero, but instead as a villain or somebody close to a villain, or a monster in the world, like a slime, for instance. And also, as with this one, Reincarnated as a Sword, sometimes they get thrown in there as inanimate objects, or just objects in general. There is, I believe, you can't quote me on this, you can quote me on this, but I believe there's even one where somebody's reincarnated into the world as a vending machine. I have a feeling if I read that one, it's also going to become Manga of the Week simply for the absurdity of it, but I haven't personally read it or confirmed its existence, but I think that's a thing. Anyway, this poor schmuck, our protagonist, gets absolutely annihilated by a guy that's texting while driving and finds himself awakening as a sentient sword buried in a rock. As he obviously has a little bit of a learning curve getting used to being a sword rather than a human being, he begins to find out that he's actually fairly powerful. He can use mana and spells to fling himself around and do insane amounts of damage to nearby monsters. And as he gets stronger and more comfortable in his new body, so to speak, he ventures further and further away from where he began. And while this isn't in and of itself necessarily a problem, he gets a little too gung-ho and buries himself almost to the hilt in dirt. And while normally this wouldn't be a huge problem for somebody as powerful as our sword, this particular dirt, for whatever reason, is magical and completely drains his mana, which means that he can no longer use spells or whatever to get himself out of the dirt. And so he sits for months, actually months, waiting for somebody to hopefully come and pick him out of the dirt so he can continue on. Finally, our other protagonist arrives, this time in the form of a mysterious black cat beast woman who appears to be a slave. The sword desperately calls out to her telepathically, and once she picks him up, they realize that he can share his skills with her, making them a very powerful duo of sword and wielder. She kills the monsters attacking the caravan and frees herself and the other slaves. The girl's name is Fran, as it turns out, and after saving her life, she takes after calling the sword Master. Now, I'm going to stop here with the plot because obviously I want you to read it for yourself, but I am going to go a bit further in breaking down the story in order to explain or dissuade some common tropes that you may see popping up already here. For those of you who are not new to reading manga, the very overpowered protagonist trope is very common. They have either a godlike skill that allows them to immediately deal with any kind of threat or danger or whatever with minimal effort, or they have some sort of point system thing where in any sort of a tense situation they sort of point dump max out whatever skill they need in order to overcome the situation. It makes for a semi-boring story whenever you know that they're just going to be able to max out, anti-ghost magic to deal with like some kind of crazy poltergeist or something like that. So in saying that, obviously, I'm going to praise this manga eternally for not really focusing on that. This manga actually focuses more on its world and the characters, specifically the relationship between Master and Fran, and what that relationship between the two of them means for their respective dreams and for the world itself. When I asked a friend of mine what set this manga apart from all of the others of its kind that he had read, he said that he particularly, and I agree with him, latched onto the sort of father-daughter, master-disciple relationship between Master and Fran. It is pretty unique in manga for that type of relationship to be fostered. Typically, they focus on something more like a harem or just an actual relationship where it's focused on romance rather than nurturing, I guess I would put it. Master really takes on the role of Fran's surrogate father. He praises and dotes and worries and frets and really just helps to guide Fran in this world and help her find her place and realize her dreams. Fran, on the other hand, gains someone she can trust, someone who's always going to try to be there for her, and in return, she does many of the same things for Master. I feel like, I don't have kids myself, but I feel like any parent will say that just as much as they do for their kids, hopefully, their kids do for them. Now, you may not realize it till later on in life, but I hope that I've put as much into my own parents as they put into me. And you get to experience that in this manga, which is very unique in my opinion. This story does a really wonderful job of showing the multitude of characters and all of their journeys through life with and without each other. The art is super, super gorgeous, honestly. It's black and white, it's a manga, but it still has so much life to it that you don't always get with these, particularly isekai manga. They typically have kind of the same art style, character designs, everything. This manga has very unique characters, in my opinion. But I also am not an expert, and I haven't read every isekai manga there is because, frankly, like I said, it gets a little boring. The story and writing just sweep you along. I blitzed through the first like 30 out of 55 chapters, and I looked up at the clock, and it was like 6 hours past. I completely lost track of time. And actually last month, I think, something like that, an anime adaptation was announced, and I believe it's gonna come out sometime in 2022. Don't know when. Probably late, if I had to guess. To close, Reincarnated as a Sword is a wonderfully crafted epic that manages to somehow fall into tropes and completely undermine them. You can't avoid all tropes, I don't think. I don't think you can avoid all tropes and have a great story. Tropes exist for a reason, much like the controversial opinion that that's why stereotypes exist. They're very similar. It manages to weave a father-daughter, master-disciple story that is equal parts familiar and brand new. And yes, I'm full of contradictions with this closing, but you really just have to experience it for yourself. I can't put it into words, obviously. If you're not a fan of manga, the light novels came out first and have more source material, obviously. Because of that, they read like books. It's like a book. It's got words, normal words. It's not pictures. It's not a comic book, whatever you want to call it. And if you're not a fan of reading anything but subtitles, you can wait until the anime comes out next year sometime. Hopefully next year. Not every manga that I review will have an anime adaptation that has come out, will come out, has been announced, whatever. I actually do read some manga, I think, that are not super popular, but we'll see, because another one that I was gonna do hopefully down the line at some point just got an anime adaptation announced. So, well, until next week, or whatever one-off video I decide to do in between, this has been Manga of the Week, again with Reincarnated as a Sword. I will leave some links down below to where you can read the manga. I don't know exactly where you can read the light novels. I believe they're actually on like the Google bookstore. Google Books? I don't know if that's a thing. I don't know what that actually was called, but Google isn't exactly imaginative in naming their stuff. So, if you want to leave a comment for the sake of feedback, criticism, praise, whatever you want to do, I greatly appreciate that. It helps me to give y'all the best videos that I can, because I actually then know what you're enjoying. Until next week, this has been Papadopoulos signing off, and I will see y'all next Monday. See ya next Monday. See ya. I will see you next Monday. Bye. Well, maybe not a good father, but anything you can think of that. Damn you, Ian.